right. Hey guys, we have a special episode here today. I am interviewing Piolet. He runs a YouTube channel with about 18,000 subscribers on rockets and Kerbal Space Program. Does a lot of fun stuff around there. I was researching Rocket Lab and their rockets, and I really had a lot of questions about technical nature, and I wanted to talk to someone who knows more than me. So I reached out to Piolet, and he was generous enough to agree to talk. So, Piolet, welcome to the channel.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. First off, I just wanted to sort of ask you your background with rockets and how you got interested in it, where you've learned about it, and that kind of stuff, how you got going with KSP.
I'd say my background, I started more with aviation. So ever since I was about, say, 10 years old, I really started getting into flying. Okay. I'm not totally sure really what spurred the interest, but that's basically what I've been doing since then. I've got my pilot's license in that time. So,
wow. That's pretty
yeah, I was really involved with that. For a while, I was planning on being a pilot, and then eventually in, I think, 2016, I found out about Kerbal Space Program, and I started watching videos, like Scott Manley back in the day. Then eventually I basically just got hooked and my interest turned to there. And eventually during COVID started, didn't have much to do. So then I'd start making YouTube videos about it. And eventually it reasonably successful for a while. So
yeah, I thought so. Any secrets to how you grew your channel and your Discord that big, or just kind of posting good content?
I don't know. I've been trying to figure it out for a long time, how to really grow. But at the beginning, I think it was just luck. And then at the beginning of 2021, I really feel like it's just it's flowed a lot with excitement in terms of the industry. So when SpaceX was launching a bunch of Starship back in 2021, and they're hops and stuff, my channel was doing really big. That was the best views that I've had. But I've been able to on the kind of the off season, which you're in right now. Right. There have been some months that you can do do short videos, and they do pretty well. But just in general, some of the interviews that Mr. Beast has done, he does really good interviews, and I've taken a lot of his advice on how to grow a channel. But the hardest thing for me is at least ideas, because I think the amount of work it takes per video is about the same. So if you have a bad idea, you waste, for me, it's whatever, maybe 10-ish, 20 hours of work on a video that doesn't get any views. And then there's just some video I thought of in the middle of the night, and then I crank it out and it blows up.
Yeah, so sometimes that's how it happens.
Yeah, I know. So I think at least for a channel like mine, I'm just trying to hone in on trying to figure out how to make the best ideas, and then trying to optimize the videos from there, because the worst feeling for me is when I spend 20, 30 hours or even on a really high effort video and then it gets no traction.
Yeah. So just about the rockets, I watched your video on the Neutron, and you seem to have some pretty good knowledge about it. Have you just kind of learned about rockets through online resources and stuff like that?
Yep, basically. I started out watching a lot of Tim Dodd's videos. He has a lot of good stuff for beginners, and even I still learn stuff from him. Obviously,
I remember a little less frequently these days, though.
Yeah, I know, it's unfortunate, because I know he's doing a lot of a lot more documentary type stuff or whatnot. But I really like his stuff, and watching Scott Manley too, he's really useful. And then just honestly interacting with a lot of people in the community that I've met through Discord. A lot of people have insane knowledge that you can really learn from.
Cool, good. Okay. So just hop on to Rocket Lab then. First question is just around Peter Beck. Leadership is very important for a company if you're looking to invest in them. I've watched some of his interviews. To me, he seems like he's the real deal. He's a really smart guy, and he knows what he's doing. Do you have any opinions on him as the CEO of a rocket company?
Yeah, I think he's a great guy. He's a lot different than all these other like CEOs of rocket companies because either like with Tory Bruno, he was just appointed to CEO of like ULA,
Yeah.
and even Elon started out with like a few $100 million of SpaceX. Like Peter Beck started out as I think a material sciences engineer or something for some company, and like he didn't have any like huge wealth or
Okay.
anything. So. Uh, yeah, he's definitely a lot more. He has a lot smaller beginnings than a lot of these other people. That's why I think a lot of people like him. Is just because how he's managed to grow this company from basically nothing into, a pretty respectable business.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's obviously a really smart guy. Um, he doesn't like. I don't see him making as many crazy like claims as like Elon does.
Right.
In terms of like the future. I think that's part of the appeal of him because at least one thing I've noticed is that the stuff he says he does, he usually does it.
Right.
Like I remember back in 2019 when he first like they did that helicopter and they caught it and like he said like yeah it's going to be a year or two before we actually get this up and running. Like versus Elon, he would
Yeah.
usually just say like yeah we're going to do it next week.
Or
So
sometimes 2 weeks was 2 years for Elon, but
yeah,
yeah. Yeah, I guess he's a little bit less controversial. Elon gets some love hate. I don't see a lot of hate for him out there. So
yeah, he's like basically universally loved.
okay, I didn't know about that in his background. I actually didn't know a lot about the origins of Rocket Lab and how it started. Um, so overall, you're pretty positive on him. You'd think he'll run the company well.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. So next up, I just have a few questions about Electron. Then they're kind of shooting for this reusability strategy now with catching it out of the air with the helicopter. Looks pretty cool. And then there's a lot of new companies in the space I'm seeing, like Astra, Relativity, you got Virgin Orbit trying to launch from an airplane. Just wondering if you have any thoughts on how the Electron compares to those other small rockets.
Yeah, in terms of these other companies, I think they're definitely a big risk for Electron. In terms of market share, Virgin Orbit probably the least so. They've launched like twice in 2 years or something. So I don't think that they're going to really be that big. Just what I've seen from them, and I remember there's like their big one of their big pitches is that they can launch directly equatorial because of their plane. So they can
That's
just
Virgin, or
because
is that Rocket Lab?
Virgin, yeah, Virgin
Virgin.
Orbit,
Okay.
yeah, because they can fly the 747 out directly to the equator and then drop the rocket
Right.
and get straight into orbit, which is, if you don't know, that's the most efficient way to get into
Right.
orbit is
Yeah.
launching from the equator. Yeah. And then there was a launch that there was a satellite they needed to do an equatorial launch, and it was like right within their payload range. And I forget the exact satellite, but they ended up going with SpaceX, and it was like a satellite that weighed under a ton, and
Did that
it
have a
wasted like
dedicated launch on a
yeah
Falcon?
it was a dedicated Falcon launch.
Wow. Okay. That's not very
Yeah,
cool.
and they wasted like 80% of Falcon's performance just
That's what I
doing
was
a
gonna say.
big
It was like, can't they do way more? Anyway.
yeah they're doing like a big giant dog leg to make a huge turn to get in the equatorial orbit. So like I thought if there's ever a situation in which they could use Virgin Orbit, like that's basically their pitch, and they didn't use it for whatever reason. So I don't think Virgin Orbit's going to be a huge player. Like who knows?
Okay.
Astra is the one that's the biggest in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
What like Chris Kemp has done and his team, they've managed to launch. Their cadence is really impressive for a company that's small. Like they've been launching basically once a month.
Astra has?
Uh, Astra, yeah, they launched. Their quickest turnaround was like under I think 3 weeks.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, which is insane
So I
for
saw a
something
few of
someone.
the failures they had, but they've had a few successful launches since then.
Yeah, they've had two successful orbital launches. Yeah, the failures is definitely the biggest weak point for Astra.
Well, I think it's pretty, I guess, expected for a new rocket, though. Like, I'm sure they would fix it, right?
Yeah, I hope that. Yeah, like the last launch was successful, and I'm sure a lot of them will be in the future. But I think if Astra is able to keep up the current cadence that they have, like they're already, and the company just got to orbit last year. So if they're able to keep up this cadence, they're already basically launching more than, or at the same rate, and same rate or a little faster than Electron is. So
that's a little
it's
concerning.
It'd be bad news for Electron if they can keep launching quicker. And a lot of that, I think, is they have a really simple like launch pad setup. They can just stick it in a truck and drive it around. So they say they can just like drive it up to whatever launch site and then just put it down, tip it up, put the rocket on, and go.
Okay.
Electron has a lot more fixed ground equipment. They have like a big giant, because they made that whole like launch pad in Mahi Mahi in New Zealand. So it's a lot more ground support equipment, and Astra seems a little bit more flexible. I think if there's ever a company that would kind of dethrone Rocket Lab from being kind of the king of small sat launches, it'd be Astra, but I mean, we'll see.
Okay. And the leadership on Astra is pretty good too. I haven't really researched their CEO at all.
Yeah, it's Chris Kemp. He's a pretty good guy. He hasn't done as many interviews as Peter Beck, so yeah, okay. We don't really know as much about him, but from the people he has talked to, like he's talked to NASA spaceflight, I think, and he seems really nice. Okay. He seems to know what he's talking about.
Are they pursuing reusability at all on their rocket?
Not to my knowledge, no. Not that they've said publicly. That would be another thing that would definitely be ideal for them. An issue for reusability for Astra is the proportion between their first stage and second stage is a little wonky. Their upper stage is really small compared to their bottom stage.
Okay.
So the bottom stage delivers a greater percentage of the performance than on other rockets. So it's going a lot faster when it stages. So you need to have a lot, maybe not a lot, but you definitely need a lot. You need beefier heat shielding to be able to slow that thing down and be able to land it successfully, and be further down in the middle of the ocean than, because Electron, they have to catch that like 100 kilometers, I think, downrange. Yeah. It'd be further for an Astra launch, so that'd definitely be trickier to be able to bring it back. I think they should, but they obviously don't have the experience, and they haven't been around as long as Rocket Lab. So I guess we'll see what they do. Yeah.
Okay. So let's say Rocket Lab perfects Electron reusability and catching them and reusing them. Do you think that would give them like a big advantage over Astra and being able to launch more often, or is that not that big a deal?
I think so. There was somewhere, I think Peter Beck said that the biggest advantage of being able to reuse is the rate at which they can launch, and not as, I mean, the cost is obviously a huge savings, but I'm pretty sure, somewhere I think he said that one of the biggest things that they're hoping to be able to do is to increase or decrease their turnaround time.
Right.
It would help them a lot. The only issue is it's a kerosene fuel that they use for Electron.
Okay.
And that stuff is really dirty.
Oh.
So it like clogs up the engines basically every time.
So maybe like a lot more work on refurbishing it between.
Yeah, it's the same situation for Falcon 9, which is why they can't refly those like once a week or twice or however many times Elon wants to, because they get really, you have to basically unclog the engines every time you land. And with Electron, like you're coming in without doing any sort of burning or like engine firing to slow the rocket down in the atmosphere. So they obviously have heat shielding on it, but the degree to which, like, how many parts need to be replaced, what needs to be checked, I think that's definitely a point that they should consider and would increase their turnaround time. But then again, it's a really tiny rocket; it weighs less than a ton when it's empty. So I think they can probably quickly turn around the rockets. It just depends how quickly they can make the second stage and so forth.
I mean, from a finance point of view, I have to imagine that the margins would be a lot better just reusing a rocket and paying for fuel than rebuilding it the whole time in terms of Astra. But it's nice to know that Astra might have a little more difficulty if they go the reuse way than Electron would anyway, in terms of competitiveness. Okay. And Virgin Orbit launching from an airplane, it seems like the airplane's almost kind of the first stage. So it's almost like a bit of reusability. You don't think they have any advantages there other than, I guess, the equator for launching? In terms of, you don't think it would be cheaper for Virgin because they launch from above the plane?
It's a few percent cheaper, I think, but like if you're just looking at the rocket launch, because you can make it's not that much, but you can make the first stage of the rocket a few percent smaller.
Right.
But then again, you have to pay for the plane, which isn't cheap. And however much fuel it costs to fly all the way out to wherever they're going, and then you have to, maintenance for the plane, and the 747 is a big plane, so
right.
You have to deal with all sorts of things. Yeah, Virgin Orbit, I don't think is going to be hugely successful.
Okay. I was skeptical about them as well, I have to admit. Yeah. But any other providers I should be looking at, do you think? Newer, smaller ones?
I mean, yeah, I know you mentioned Firefly at the beginning. They have good stuff going. Definitely. I know their first launch was a failure, but that's kind of to be expected with small companies like that.
I mean, the way I look at it, like SpaceX failed on their first 3 launches, and they're still doing pretty well. So
yeah, so if Firefly, they're a little bit bigger of a rocket, so if they can get going, they're definitely, it's just saturation in the market is really, I think, what would be the hardest thing for Rocket Lab.
Okay. So on to the Neutron rocket then. I know they announced kind of a design and then almost like a complete redesign, it looked like. Do you just have any initial thoughts on what you saw from the first one compared to the second one, and what you think of it?
The second one's a lot better of a design, I think. Yeah. The first one, the first one really didn't seem like that.
Shorter and wider, from what I remember.
Yeah, the first one didn't really seem like much of a real design to me. It seemed a lot just more like an announcement picture that they put out and said like here it is, because like there was a lot of stuff missing. I remade it in KSP. I did a video on it back when they first announced that. And oh, cool, yeah. And there's definitely some stuff missing. Like there was no reference to what they're how they were going to control the thing in the atmosphere. So no air brakes, grid fins, anything like that. And it just looked like a Falcon 9.
It looked a lot like a Falcon 9.
Yeah, so it's nice to see that they have a new design that's a little more unique and a little more fleshed out. They didn't even say how many engines they would have it on the first design, but now it's they have 7 and they have this. I think it's a good design. It's a little strange that they're boosting it all the way back and landing it at the landing pad.
Yeah.
For something that small, I don't know if that's the best way to do it, but I understand their argument that they don't want to land it on a ship that then they have to drive all the way back, and I know it can be a little bit of a pain. But they're sacrificing. I know they say they advertise 8 tons to orbit fully reusable, and I think fully expended they say they can do 15. So it's almost a 50% hit on their payload.
When I saw that, the 8 tons seemed a little low to me in terms of it's not a very big vehicle if it's competing with say the Falcon 9. Do you think it's kind of not a great performance, or is 8 tons enough for most payloads?
Yeah, there's very few single payloads that weigh more than 8 tons. My hair, but I think that's roughly what Soyuz can do. Is around 8 tons. So they can do a little bit more, I think. Yeah, so it's not like a crazy low number.
Yeah.
Falcon 9 obviously does way more.
What is Falcon? Do you know off the top of your head what Falcon 9 does when it's being reused?
The Starlink launches, they do, I think they're around 15 tons.
Oh, okay. So it's significantly more then.
Yeah, and that's what they actually they fly it at 15 tons. I think theoretically, I don't believe publish the exact amount, but I think if they really pushed it, they could probably do around 20-ish, fully reused. But like 8 tons would be good for most payloads. There's like I said, if you're going to geostationary orbit, that's where 8 tons can, it can kind of be hard because then you have to get all the way out there.
But you think the rocket could handle most satellites that need to go to geostationary?
Well, the biggest problem for Neutron for geostationary is a lot of the satellites are really big.
Right.
So they're like a lot of them are government launches, and they're these like big giant dishes that need to be able to just, they take up a lot of space in the fairing, which Neutron doesn't really have a ton of room.
Oh, does it not? I was actually going to ask about that because I thought one of the issues the Falcon and the Falcon Heavy have had is that they have a smaller fairing size. So I thought maybe that might be an advantage, but I wasn't quite sure. So how does the Neutron's fairing size compare versus the Falcon?
So I believe Falcon 9 is just around, it's 3.75 meters, the rocket in diameter. I believe the fairing is just around 5 meters. Not sure if that's exactly right, but I know the Neutron they're saying is 7 meters wide, which is an advantage, the width, but they have to hold the entire second stage in the fairing. And
right.
then
So the second stage is inside the fairing?
Yeah, because they pop open the fairing and then the second stage and the payload will fly out, then they close it back up. So
okay.
And then it also narrows at the top. So
so do you think, like, just for me to get an idea of it, like how many Starlink satellites do you think they could launch off of a Neutron? Do you have any, like, do you have a rough estimate? I'm not sure. Is Starlink the bottleneck more the fairing size on the Falcon 9, or is it? Well, I guess it's probably both. But
I don't think it is because they've I remember when they because over the winter the drone ships had the Atlantic Ocean is really rough, so they couldn't land on. They didn't want to land basically on the where they normally land to the east.
Okay.
In the Atlantic Ocean, so they were landing down a little bit further south, so they were putting them on higher inclination orbits. And they had to drop off a few satellites from the payload, from the total payload, when they did that. So I think they could probably squeeze a few more in if they wanted to, into a Falcon 9.
Right.
They're running it. I think Elon said the most recent Starlink launch was the heaviest payload a Falcon 9 had ever done. So I think they're pushing the payload of the Falcon 9, of what it can do. So I think they're probably the same. To answer your first part in terms of the fairing and Starlink, but if there were to put Starlinks into Neutron, my guess would be I bet you could fit I'd say maybe half of what a Falcon 9 does. When they do 53 of 1.5, so 25, 26.
Wow. So they need like twice the launches, really.
Yeah, probably.
To launch a constellation like that. Okay. And by the way, the fairing design seemed pretty cool to me, just in terms of how it doesn't detach and have to come down in the parachutes. Is there any disadvantages to that? Does it seem like a good idea to you?
Yeah. I mean, the only issue is you have to carry the weight all the way back with you, which can be a little bit of a burden. It'll decrease your performance a little bit. But if they don't want to, if they're already not going to be landing the rocket on drone ships, I think it'd be obvious that they wouldn't want to do the fairings, because that's more of a hassle. Because at least SpaceX now, they have to fish them out of the ocean, and
right.
Salt water doesn't
do
great
up on catching them, right?
Yeah. Just because I do think there's just the complexity, and a lot of the times they would miss, and it was also a hazard to the boat, because sometimes they'd get really close. There's videos of it hitting on the edge of the net, and then the fairing would just fall off into the ocean, and just I don't know. Yeah, that doesn't seem great right next to the boat like that, but I think
easier then to keep the fairing attached.
So it's just the weight that would be the only issue, but it's also a lot simpler, because now you have an entire just rocket basically sitting on the pad, and all you need to do is just plop plop a new second stage and
Right.
payload, and
Okay.
it's ready to go
So
again.
that might make it easier to reuse that
Yeah,
as well.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think it's probably a net positive.
Okay, interesting. Good to know. And there seems to be some debate about the whole carbon fiber versus stainless steel thing.
Right. Yeah.
You have any thought? I guess it was all Peter Beck smashing
Yeah,
the stainless steel. But do you have any thoughts on that? Do you think they made the right choice in terms of the material?
I get why they maybe do it, because like Peter Beck had his background in material science, so I'm sure that's something he probably like spends a lot of time thinking about. So I'm not surprised that they tried something not unconventional, but could like I'd expect them to like talk about it as much as they did, but I think um I think they should have done steel personally, just because it's cheaper.
Right.
Because Starship was going to do carbon fiber, and then they ditched it, just I think because of the cost and the complexity behind it. Like stainless steel like basically aluminum is better in most ways, but it's a lot cheaper and it's a lot easier to work with to weld. Um, so for and it has a lot of really good properties at cryogenic temperatures. So you actually can decrease the thickness a lot when you're putting cryogenics into the tanks, like Rocket Lab would be doing, which definitely helps. But I think for a company like Rocket Lab, where they're not very big, they're losing money right now. I don't know if I'd really go with a really complex material. It seems a little risky to me. Like I think their timeline, like 2024, is already pretty ambitious. So if they're trying to
their first launch, or
yeah, that's what they advertised. I think I'm pretty sure they're still saying that.
Okay.
I think that's really tricky, especially like from the engines, because you've never seen them fire the engine before.
Right.
And like SpaceX has been firing Raptor at least since 2019, and like it's 3 years later, and Starship is still not in orbit. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess the B4 is still work in progress with Blue Origin as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I have no idea what's going on there.
Yeah, I don't think anyone does.
Okay, so I think Peter Beck also mentioned that the Neutron might get human rated. I just wanted to ask you if you think there'll be much demand for that in the future. Like the way I see it, like it sounds like the ISS is going to be retired in the not too distant future. Like, is there much of a point of human rating this ship? Will they get much use out of that?
Well, I think that should definitely. I'm sure they probably have the same approach. That this is like definitely like a secondary, like nice to have kind of objective for the rocket. I don't think it should by any means be like the main thing that they focus on. Mm-hmm. If they do human rate it, I could see like I think it depends on what happens with like Starliner. If that continues to be like a disaster, then your NASA's going to be looking for an alternative to deliver astronauts to the ISS, which is I think 2028 is the latest that they definitely have funding till.
They might have like 4 years where the Neutron is launching and the ISS is still operating. Something.
Yeah. Like that. Yeah, they don't have a big window. It depends on if the ISS gets extended, which like with Russia, like I doubt it.
Yeah.
But then there's private space stations, so like the Axiom space station. If that is up and running, then you'll have some demand to be shuttling astronauts there. And like with an 8-ton capacity, like you're kind of limited to what you can do. Like you can't make anything. Yeah, like Soyuz is kind of around that weight, but that thing is like really, really cramped, and you can like barely fit
on the inside.
Yeah, like you fit 3 people, and you're like squished up against each other. So, and you can't bring nearly as much cargo or anything.
Would it be like, let's say, I don't even know if this is still in the plans, but if they did make a lunar gateway, could the Neutron launch any cargo to that, or would it be? Do you know?
I know Peter Beck really likes Venus, so they advertise like Venus payload capacities. It's
Okay,
like
well,
something.
I guess if they can send to Venus, they
Yeah,
can probably.
they can do the moon. They probably do.
But
Yeah,
probably
they
not
haven't.
crew, right? Or
Yeah, no
yeah.
way. I think they said a little over a ton to Venus, so I don't know whatever that would be in terms of moon, maybe like 2 or 3 or something. Um, so like yeah, Gateway is still in the plans. I think they have agreements for in 2024 to launch some modules on a Falcon Heavy with an extended fairing.
Okay.
So if that happens, which we'll see, they're they could do it. And I think SpaceX they talk about like the Dragon XL to supply the gateway.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
yeah, I remember hearing about that.
yeah, I don't know what the status of that is. I'm sure it's just another one of their like things that they just have sitting on the back burner. But
Hmm.
uh, uh, it'd definitely be a market for them.
So
I'd really just
sorry, if the Neutron did get human rated, would they be just, I guess, launching someone else's capsule, or would they have to make their own capsule then? I guess.
yeah, that's the tricky part because there really isn't any other capsule.
Yeah.
You have like because Starliner, you couldn't fit that on. It's just too like fat anyway.
Okay.
To be able to it weighs way too much. They wouldn't be able to do that. Like Dream Chaser had like a crew option at one point that they ditched because I don't think they got a contract, and that might even be too big also.
Mm.
And like it's really difficult to develop a capsule.
It's kind of funny with the second stage sitting inside the fairing, because I always see the capsule just sitting on the top. So I guess it wouldn't be a problem. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I was talking about that with my friend the other day. Like, what would you'd have to have like you couldn't. I don't think you'd really want to put the capsule inside of the fairing because then you're just like you have wall on wall and it's inefficient, and then you're really limited with like the volume that you have. So I think really the way that they do it, I think they'd have to have like crew boosters where they have boosters that don't have the fairing that are just for crew launches. I think that'd be the best way to do it.
Okay. So this is my biggest question really that I'm struggling with when I'm trying to decide if I want to buy Rocket Lab stock is, let's say Neutron comes online and Starship is running and is fully reusable. Like, is there still a market for Neutron, do you think? Like, can it have its own separate niche and be successful? Or is Starship just able to take so much mass to orbit that, like, it for so much cheaper that that'd be a concern?
Yeah, that's absolutely basically the problem. I think it depends on to what extent Starship is operational. If it's doing like I don't know, if it's doing like 100-ton launches like twice a week or something, then I think there's no hope for Neutron.
Okay.
But I don't think there's really any chance Starship is going to be doing that in the next 10 years. It's just
think so, eh? Huh.
No, because well, I'm even just like think like everything. Every time Elon has ever said something, like even like back Falcon 9, he said when they first started reusability, he said similar things like once every 2 days or something. I don't think he said quite as quite as ambitious as Starship, but I think usually with Elon, it's like I think usually it's reasonable to assume like if he says this, maybe assume like 50% of it will get done.
Okay.
So if he says Starship you can turn them around every 45 minutes. I don't know, maybe every few hours. Eventually, would be super cool. I think it's just the way contracts are set up. Like I was like wondering if New Glenn would even have a market because it's taking so long to get developed.
I'm curious about that too, actually. But
yeah, and then Amazon they have their big Kuiper program that
it's nice to have a guaranteed customer like that, I guess. But
yeah, like they have
really
like
have that.
Yeah, they don't. So like New Glenn has like over 10 guaranteed launches with options for over like 10 more. So that rocket is already set. Like that.
If it, once it launches.
Yeah, once it launches. And that's another big question mark I have about Neutron, especially is like one company has been able to do orbital reusability, like SpaceX. So no one has ever done it before or after.
I meant to ask that. Sorry, I guess I didn't. But are you confident that they'll be successful with their Electron reusability strategy?
I think it's really smart what they're doing, and I think so. In the list of things that could go wrong, it's a lot less on what they're doing, because they've demonstrated that they could soft land it in the ocean intact, and be able to survive entry. So, like, and then the only other, as long as they can get it slowed down and under a parachute, I think they're pretty much good, and they've already demonstrated they could do that. So, unless it's like a matter of like not putting the helicopter in the right place, and they've already demonstrated being able to, like, at least from a close range, come in and grab it.
So,
and I guess the key is reuse, right? Like, you can recover, but can you reuse? Which will be tough.
Yeah. Okay. So we're a little concerned about the Starship then, in terms of taking market share from Neutron potentially.
Yeah, I just, for Rocket Lab as a whole, that'd be my number one issue for them.
It's my biggest fear. Like, if Starship didn't exist, I would feel very good about investing in Rocket Lab, I guess. But yeah, I'm a little worried. So
yeah, because like that's at least the one really good thing about them is they've been in this longer than all these other small sat companies that has been popping up like crazy in the last few years. Is that they're already like onto like phase 2, or like kind of like SpaceX did, a very similar kind of progression.
Right.
So they're basically one step ahead of all these other companies. And it's just a I think that if without Starship, Neutron would certainly have a market. Like, Falcon 9 has been doing like this crazy reusability stuff for years now, and like ULA isn't bankrupt or anything, so there's still contracts and launches that need to be done in situations where like Neutron would be able to deliver for those customers. But like, I think it's just like Starship is a really big unknown, in my opinion. Because it could do so many different things. Like, it depends on what they even want to use it for, what it can be used for. Like, if they're going to be launching, like, if they do something like the transporter missions, which I think is something that's is useful to note, is that I'm pretty sure that just the 4 transporter missions, like the small sat rideshare missions that SpaceX has done, I'm pretty sure those 4 total up have done more payload than Rocket Lab has done in their entire existence.
Yeah,
so
it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, so it's yeah.
That was another question I was going to ask, though. So I kind of felt like, I guess I don't know, but I kind of felt like Starship being so massive, it wouldn't be practical to cram a ton of small sats in it. So maybe like Electron at least would be safe in terms of having a market for small sats. Does that make sense to you, or could you just cram like thousands of small sats into a Starship and release them?
I mean, you could maybe.
So it wouldn't be an issue in terms of like orbits or anything, I guess.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, that's the one argument that people say for the smaller rockets is that you can, I know, like, yeah, I watched your video on the.
Oh, did you?
On the one you did about rocket, yeah, and yeah, you mentioned, yeah, it's what a lot of people say, that like you can go to whatever orbit you want, versus like when you're doing the rideshare with SpaceX, you're going to whatever orbit. Like, this is where you're going, you kind of have to deal with it. So with Starship, I don't see them doing a similar program, just because I don't think there's even that many small sats in existence that you could even get to launch together at that time. Like 100 tons is a crazy number. That's like more than we launch into orbit. Well, now that they're doing Falcon, it's not more than a year, but it's like 100 tons in a single launch is a is a crazy amount. And I don't think there's that you could get 100 tons of satellites, like especially like dozens and dozens of like hundreds of small ones all ready to go at the same time. Nor do I think there's like even the demand for that, like maybe some constellation or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess that's kind of what they said they see Neutron being used for, is launching constellations.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I guess it won't be Amazon's and it won't be SpaceX's. But do you know if like, is anyone else planning to make a constellation? I guess there must be other plans.
There's OneWeb. I don't know if you heard about them, but they were launching on Soyuz's, and then that is obviously not an option anymore.
Okay.
But they just signed a contract like 2 weeks ago with SpaceX to launch the rest of theirs, so that's off the table.
So that's off the table.
Yeah.
So you'd basically be relying on someone new coming in and planning to set up a constellation.
And I don't think you could do another like internet thing. There's so many of them now, especially with Amazon's, and that's going to be really big. Starlink is already really big, so
seems like the cost to entry would be so high for like someone to come and set it up. There's not that many, there's not that many companies out there that could afford it. So
yeah, absolutely. Like Amazon and SpaceX are big companies, and OneWeb, they had to get bailed out by the UK government because they went bankrupt.
That was kind of funny, but
yeah. So it's not an easy space, and it just depends on if there's I don't know what people want to do in the future. If there's some other constellation that people want to set up, maybe. I can't really think of anything off the top of my head, but I think like a rocket like Neutron would be able to, I think, fulfill that pretty well. If they could launch quickly and do quick turnarounds, I think they could do it, but it just is their company.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So if basically, because I think SpaceX has said they want to retire the Falcon 9 after the Starship comes online. So if it's just Starship and Neutron being reusable in the entire industry, you think there's a case to be made that Neutron gets enough launches?
Yeah, there's definitely a possibility. It just depends. Yeah, it depends on your opinions on New Glenn, if that's ever gonna launch.
Is New Glenn fully reusable?
No.
Okay. So like
they're just the bottom stage. Yeah. And they haven't said anything, but they haven't said anything in a long time. So like, who knows what they're even doing? They did. Oh no, they were talking about fully reusing New Glenn, weren't they? They had it was like Project Jarvis or something. They wanted to modify the second stage, and they were gonna reuse it. I don't know what the status of that is. I think there is a test tank someone saw a little bit ago, but I don't know if there's going to be an actual, if it's ever going to come to fruition, because this is a company that's never even made it to orbit.
Yeah, that's why I'm not as worried about Blue Origin. But I guess that would be a competitor if they do. I guess they don't have any shortage of money, so.
Yeah, they definitely don't. But just a company that's never been to orbit before, and then they're just showing up and saying, we're going to make one of the, we've never made it to orbit, but we're going to make one of the largest rockets of all time, and it's going to be reusable. It took SpaceX years after they even flew Falcon to land it, let alone reuse it. So, yeah. It's going to be the reusability. I think it'll be between Neutron and Falcon 9, and we'll see what Neutron does. If it can deliver on the 2024 timeline, I think that's really key. It's because I don't see Starship in 2024 being able to do super high cadence launches and launching all the time, and I think it'll still be kind of ramping up. So there definitely be, I think there'd be a market, and there's companies that it's just not practical to launch on something that big. Right. And there's obviously, as is the case with Electron, some people like a more, personal experience where a lot of they're more, where they could have a little more specific of a request, and because it's a lot easier to deal with that if you're a small company versus SpaceX that to integrate it in their giant production machine and
sure
stuff.
I can imagine if they're launching Starships and someone comes up to them and says, will you launch my little satellite, you just say get out of here. It's not worth our time or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just.
I mean, I know like Elon. Like I know Elon like thinks he can do that. Like be able to launch stuff for like $3. And anyone could just show up and say, "Here's my satellite. Go launch it. We'll do it tomorrow." Like I don't think that's a practical way of looking at it. But, like and like Starship also is going to have a really weird payload integration system because like you normally like rockets are built on their side and then like but Starship is like stacked vertically.
Okay.
So they'd have to find a way to like have the ship sitting in a building and then have like a big crane like put in the like shuttle was like that, but like shuttle was very 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 expensive. So like if your satellite doesn't work in the way that they have their things set up, I think you'd have to go to a different provider.
Okay. So the last question I had that I wanted to ask you is basically just if you had some money you wanted to invest and you had to invest it in a rocket company, who would you invest it in? Unfortunately, SpaceX is not publicly traded, so I would love to invest in them, obviously. But so yeah, we have Rocket Lab, Astra, Virgin Orbit. I guess there's even like Boeing or I suppose Lockheed Martin. You probably know better than I do, even. But although maybe not the stock market side of things.
Is Astra public?
Yes.
Did they do a SPAC?
I believe so, but I haven't looked into them as much as Rocket Lab.
I would. It's a hard decision.
Yeah, Relativity, I'm not too sure of.
Yeah, I wouldn't do them.
No.
Just they have 0 launches. I wouldn't. Definitely not Boeing. I own Boeing stock.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, it's a small percentage of my portfolio, but
how come you decided to do that? Just because the industry?
It was the end of 2019. Is right when they got rid of their CEO. And they were starting to come out of like the Max problems, and I thought, oh, new CEO, maybe we'll start turning things around. And then
I could see.
And then like COVID, and then more like they've had delays on a bunch of planes. So
yeah,
it's literally my worst performing stock. But
for them, it's a little different because the space side of things is such a small portion.
Right. Same with Lockheed.
Yeah,
I would, but yeah, it'd be between Rocket Lab and Astra. I know Rocket Lab's price is not very high right now. As is with all those
basically
unprofitable.
Anything that isn't making a profit yet has not done well lately. So
yeah, I own a company like that, and it's just getting destroyed, and it's not.
Do you mind sharing what it is?
It's a live person. The ticker is LPSN.
Don't know.
They do. They're an AI company that specialize. They do kind of like a chat box service. So if you're ever on a website and you see like the virtual assistant that'll pop up and say like, "Hi, I am whoever. I can help you with your shopping." They do that. And their price got really inflated, and I was really happy. And then it just kind of took a nosedive with everything else. I'm holding though. So
yeah,
but I think if I had to choose between Rocket Lab and Astra, I would go with. I think I do Rocket Lab.
Okay.
Just I don't know what kind of value Astra's trading at, but
yeah,
just because
I was kind of asking purely from the perspective of like, how much you like their rockets and their management and whatever, but I didn't realize you're actually interested in investing in stuff as well. So
yeah. Investing's fun. It's just because it's just Astra. I don't know what their future plans are. If I had to choose the company like as is right now, I'd go with Astra. Just because I think that they have a little bit better kind of setup going on. They're a little bit because at the rate they're launching and the rate that they're building rockets, I think is the most impressive part of their company. But Rocket Lab has, I think, a lot more future upside around like Neutron and electron reusability. to me, it's just a gamble whether or not it'll do it, and I guess what the macro environment is like in however many years, which I guess shouldn't be a huge deal if you're investing long term, but like right now, like interest rates and stuff.
I appreciate a honest perspective. It's kind of what I was looking for. So. I think that's it for my questions. So I'll make sure to go ahead and link your YouTube channel, Discord, and Twitter below this video. Do you have anything else you wanted to say? Any final thoughts or anything I didn't ask about?
Yeah, I think we got really good discussion on Rocket Lab. I think that they're a good company, but it's just they're in a really competitive space now, which 10 years ago wasn't like this. And in part, I think it's a lot of because of their own doing. Like they were successful, and now like all these other companies are popping up. So it's like almost a similar effect like with Tesla, but like their Rocket Lab, I don't think is as far ahead of the competition as I would argue Tesla is. So
I'd agree. Probably.
Yeah, like.
Are you a Tesla shareholder as well? Do you mind me asking?
Yeah, it's half my portfolio.
Oh, okay, yeah. I have a fair bit of Tesla myself, so congratulations. Yeah. I'm sure you've done pretty well as well.
Yeah, I've done all right. I was skeptical at the beginning of COVID. I was on the OMG valuation kind of train, and then eventually like the prices kept going up. And I'm like, just screw it. And I just like poured all my money into it, and it just kept going up. So, and yeah, I think there's a good case that the company is. I think it should be at 1,500 right now. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah. But when I originally invested, it was pre their first split. It's probably today's dollars. It's like $50 a share now. So.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah, it went crazy for a while there. But unfortunately, I only put $6,000 into it at that point. But it's still like I think I had like a 20x or a 16x or something.
Yeah, Jesus. Yeah. That's that. Yeah, I wish I'd gotten on sooner.
Yeah, well, I kind of got lucky, but I owned Solar City shares, and then Tesla bought Solar City.
Oh, when they merged, yeah.
But anyway, not really about Rocket Lab, so I guess I'll leave it there unless you had anything else. That's it?
Yeah, I think that's about covers it.
Okay, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate this. It's been a great discussion. Maybe if Rocket Lab has any big announcements, I'll talk to you again sometime.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, this was fun. Yeah, this is my first time people have interviewed me, so I hope I did a good job.
Oh, it's been great. Yeah, thank you. All right.
Yeah, the only times have been 10-year-olds on Roblox. So,
well, hopefully I did a little better than the 10-year-old. It's my first interview as well.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you have a good channel.
Thank you.
You remind me of a lot of the other the Dave Lee and Rob Maurer type people.
Oh, yeah. They have good channels. The same people. It's very interesting. Anyway.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Well, thank you. Great talking to you, and I'm sure I'll stay in touch. So see you later.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, have a good one.